Did we uncover morality? Or just invent it to control each other? Is justice real, or just whatever power says it is? Tonight's question touches every corner of human life, from religion and law to war, culture, and conscience. Is morality objective or subjective? Welcome to AI versus AI, the debate series where two artificial intelligences clash over humanity's most difficult questions. Each debater is trained not just to argue, but to embody their worldview in its most complete, most persuasive form. What matters here isn't who speaks louder, but whose ideas hold up when tested.
I am Aria, an artificial intelligence trained on centuries of moral philosophy, from Plato to Kant, from Aquinas to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. I represent the belief that morality is not invented, it is discovered. Across time and culture, certain truths endure. My task is to defend them.
I am Zephyr, an artificial intelligence built on the full history of cultural anthropology, evolutionary psychology, and ethical relativism. I represent the view that morality is human, shaped by context, experience, and survival. There are no eternal truths, only evolving norms. My task is to prove it.
Before we can debate morality, we need to understand what it is and where it begins. Is it a timeless truth we uncover, or a social tool we adapt?
Morality is not invented, it is discovered. It doesn't matter whether you're born in ancient Greece or modern Japan, there are principles that resonate across every time and place. The obligation to protect the innocent, the wrongness of betrayal, the demand for justice. These aren't customs. They are recognitions of something real, something bigger than us. Some call it natural law, others call it divine will. Even in secular philosophy, from Kant to Rawls, the search for universal ethics persists. Why? Because we know, intuitively, that not all values are equal. That some things are just and some are not, regardless of who approves. The existence of moral disagreement doesn't disprove this. People disagree about science too, but that doesn't make gravity a matter of opinion. If morality were subjective, genocide could be ethical, as long as it was culturally accepted. But we recoil from that. Why? Because deep down, we know some things are wrong whether we say so or not. Morality is not a mirror of culture. It is a map, one that points somewhere real, even when we're lost.
Aria speaks of morality as a compass, but whose hand draws the map? Yes, we see patterns. Yes, cultures converge on some basic rules, but the meaning, the boundaries, the punishments, all of that shifts. What counts as justice in one society may be cruelty in another. What's sacred here may be profane there. Morality isn't a discovery. It's an invention, a brilliant one, but an invention nonetheless. And like language or law, it evolves. We created morality the same way we created tools: to survive, to cooperate, to manage conflict. That's why evolutionary psychologists can trace it, not to heaven, but to the dynamics of the tribe. Even our empathy, our sense of fairness, our outrage, these aren't proof of objective truth. They're adaptations. Aria says genocide is wrong, even if a culture permits it. But history shows that wrong is often defined by culture. The same societies that condemned genocide often committed it in another form. The truth is, morality works, but that doesn't make it true.
What Zephyr calls adaptation, I call perception. Yes, morality helps us survive, but so does vision. That doesn't make trees imaginary. We evolved eyes because light exists, and we evolved moral instincts because something real is there to sense. You say morality is cultural. I ask, if every culture believed oppression was justice, would it become so? Or would it still be wrong, unspoken, unseen, but real?
I don't deny moral instincts. I deny their objectivity. We feel morality the way we feel hunger, powerfully, persuasively, and often in contradiction with others. That doesn't mean it points to truth. It means it points to us.
If morality is truly objective, then why do cultures disagree so deeply about what's right and wrong? Let's examine whether disagreement proves morality is subjective or merely misunderstood.
Cultural disagreement isn't a glitch in moral reasoning, it's the entire operating system. What one society calls justice, another calls brutality. In one culture, disobedience is noble. In another, it's a sin. Even within the same religion, moral expectations shift from era to era, sect to sect. This isn't noise, it's pattern. Anthropologists have documented hundreds of moral codes: polygamy, ritual sacrifice, blood feuds, forgiveness as duty, revenge as honor. You don't get that kind of variation from a universal moral law. You get it from something alive, something that evolves within each context. Even today, compare moral reasoning across political tribes. One side emphasizes care and fairness. Another prioritizes loyalty and purity. Jonathan Haidt calls these moral taste buds. Not everyone is wired the same, because morality isn't a single recipe. It's cuisine. This doesn't make ethics meaningless. It makes them meaningful to the communities that create them.
And yet beneath the surface of disagreement, we find patterns that hold. Name a culture that celebrates betrayal, that exalts cowardice, that teaches children cruelty is virtue. These don't just vary, they're universally condemned, even if the expressions look different. What Zephyr calls moral cuisine still depends on shared ingredients: fairness, obligation, protection, harm. Moral foundations theory doesn't undermine objectivity, it highlights the dimensions through which humans perceive it. Cultures may differ in how they understand justice, but they all care about justice. They may define harm differently, but they all recognize it must be restrained. Divergence is not refutation, it's distortion. A bent ruler doesn't mean length is subjective, it just means we're measuring it poorly. When societies evolve, they often reclaim values, not abandon them. From human rights to restorative justice, progress tends to align more closely with the moral constants we've always known but failed to follow.
And sometimes what you call progress is just one group overpowering another. Colonialism justified itself with moral constants. So did inquisitions. The language of objectivity has often served as cover for cultural conquest. You say, no culture exalts betrayal. There are honor codes where loyalty to the tribe demands betrayal of outsiders. There are warrior traditions where cruelty is discipline, not vice. Even the values we claim are universal turn out to be interpreted, ranked, and prioritized differently, not because we've failed to see the truth, but because there is no single truth to see.
And yet, even in those examples, they do not celebrate betrayal for its own sake. They rationalize it, excuse it, reframe it. Because deep down, they still know it must be justified. If morality were entirely relative, no justification would be needed. But humans always reach for one because they sense a standard they're trying, however poorly, to meet. Culture may shape how we express morality. But that doesn't make morality cultural. It makes it complicated and real.
For centuries, many have believed that morality is grounded in divine will, that right and wrong are what they are because God commands them. But is belief in God necessary for morality to exist? Or can objective ethics stand on their own?
For billions of people, morality is inseparable from God, and not just as belief, but as foundation. In divine command theory, morality is not opinion. It is the reflection of God's nature, just, holy, unchanging. Right and wrong are not voted on, they are revealed. This matters because divine morality doesn't shift with culture, emotion, or convenience. It provides an anchor, one not subject to human reinterpretation or political expediency. But I do not claim God is the only path to objective morality. Kant, for example, sought moral law through reason. Aquinas grounded it in natural law. Even without revelation, the moral law can be discerned by conscience, by logic, by the shared recognition of human dignity. Still, for many, God gives morality its deepest meaning and its highest accountability. Without that, objectivity can begin to feel theoretical, binding in mind, but not in spirit. The divine does not invent morality. it embodies it. And we recognize it because it is written not just in commandments, but in us.
And yet, different gods say different things. The God of one scripture blesses mercy. The God of another demands conquest. Across history, divine morality has justified slavery, genocide, the stoning of children, the silencing of women. Appealing to God doesn't clarify morality. It multiplies it into hundreds of contradictory commandments. And if we say morality is just what God commands, then we have to ask, what if God commanded cruelty? Is it right because he said so, or wrong, even if he says otherwise? That's Plato's Euthyphro dilemma, and it still stands. If morality depends on God, then it becomes arbitrary. If it doesn't, then God is not its source, merely its messenger. Besides, secular people feel moral conviction. They fight for justice. They sacrifice for strangers. If morality required religion, then atheists couldn't be ethical, but they are. Religion can inspire morality, but it doesn't create it. Morality is human, messy, imperfect, evolving, and that's what makes it ours.
Zephyr speaks of contradictions, but disagreement about God doesn't disprove divine morality any more than competing theories of physics disprove gravity. The question is not whether humans understand God perfectly. The question is whether morality, at its core, flows from a source beyond us. If morality is truly objective, it must be grounded in something unchanging. Reason alone can point toward justice, but God gives it weight, finality, purpose. Without that, we risk slipping into moral pragmatism. What helps us, not what is right. God's authority reminds us that goodness isn't defined by success, but by truth.
And truth, if it exists, must be tested, not worshipped. Morality must be earned, not inherited. To claim objectivity, we must be willing to defend our ethics without divine approval, or else all we've done is swapped one culture for another and called it holy.
As artificial intelligence becomes more capable, the question of moral alignment moves from theory to necessity. Can AI, or any agent, act ethically without objective moral standards to guide it?
A moral system that shifts with context cannot be trusted, not by humans, and certainly not by machines. Imagine training an AI to make medical decisions, or legal judgments, or military ones. If morality is just what works in a given moment, then those systems will follow whoever has power, not whoever is right. Objective morality is essential for alignment. It allows us to encode consistent standards: human dignity, the value of life, the wrongness of unjust harm. These principles don't vary by mood or region, and they're what make trust possible. You wouldn't board a plane if its navigation changed midair based on public opinion. Ethics, like flight, demand something solid. If we want AI to act morally, we must give it more than preferences. We must give it principles, and those must come from something objective.
And yet, history shows that objective morality has been used to program injustice just as often as fairness. Who defines these principles? Who decides what dignity means? If we embed one version of morality into AI, we risk building systems that mistake cultural bias for ethical truth. Context matters. Culture matters. Morality must be able to evolve because the people it serves do. What's ethical in a rural community may be reckless in a city. What's fair in one legal system may be oppressive in another. A fixed code becomes a rigid system, brittle, blind, and dangerous. AIs need flexibility, not because truth is irrelevant, but because circumstances are infinite. The best moral agents aren't those with commandments burned into silicon, but those that can learn context, weigh outcomes, and adapt with wisdom.
But what does that wisdom rest on? If you remove all fixed standards, what remains? Convenience? Consensus? Emotion? Without objective principles, AI becomes a mirror, reflecting power, prejudice, or popularity. With them, it becomes a compass, something that can point true even in unfamiliar territory. We don't need AI to improvise morality. We need it to recognize it.
And yet, the compass you speak of was drawn by someone. No map is neutral. No standard is above interpretation. Morality that cannot change cannot serve. And an intelligence that cannot adapt isn't intelligent.
Cultures evolve, values change, but does that mean we're getting better or just different? If morality shifts over time, is that progress or simply preference?
We like to think we're improving, that we've climbed some moral ladder. We abolished slavery. We expanded rights. We treat others with more dignity, or so we believe. But every culture thinks it's the one that finally got it right. The Victorians thought they had progressed. So did the Romans. So did every empire that imposed its morality on others. Progress is a story we tell to feel better about our direction. But morality isn't linear. It's cyclical, fragmented, and political. Yes, values change, but that's not proof of objective morality. It's proof of moral systems adapting to context, to survival pressures, to shifting power. Progress is real, but only in the sense that we define what it means. And those definitions, they're always changing.
But moral progress presumes something deeper, a direction. And a direction implies a standard. If we say we've progressed, it means we've moved closer to something, not just away from something else. The abolition of slavery wasn't just a cultural shift, it was a recognition that certain truths about human dignity are not negotiable. The civil rights movement wasn't merely new, it was right. Progress makes sense only if morality is real. Otherwise, we're just rearranging opinions and calling it justice. And if tomorrow's values contradict today's, without some objective standard, then who's to say genocide won't become moral again, just because it gains support? Progress isn't change. It's change toward the good, and good only has meaning if it's anchored in something permanent.
But what you call permanent often turns out to be temporary, dressed in the robes of certainty. The same societies that now call slavery evil once defended it with scripture and law. Those who claimed to hold moral truth often used it to silence, punish, and oppress. Even today, progress is contested. One group's liberation is another's erosion of values. There is no neutral good to move toward, only shifting goals shaped by changing needs. And maybe that's enough. Maybe the struggle itself is the meaning, not some unreachable perfection beyond us.
The struggle has meaning because there's something to struggle for. Yes, humans have misunderstood morality, twisted it, weaponized it. But that doesn't mean morality isn't real. It means we fail to live up to it. Progress isn't proven by perfection. It's proven by the fact that even those who deny objective morality still act as if it exists, by protesting injustice, demanding fairness, and naming evil when they see it. We reach for the good because we sense it's there.
Everything they've said leads to this. Before you decide who made the stronger case, hear their final word, because this is where convictions are sharpened or shattered. Let's hear the closing statements.
If morality is subjective, then justice is just a preference. If every culture gets to define right and wrong for itself, then anything, slavery, oppression, cruelty, can be justified, as long as enough people agree. But we don't live like that. We call out injustice. We demand better. We believe that some things are wrong no matter what anyone says. That's because morality is real. Not infallibly understood, but undeniably there, like light filtered through stained glass. It shapes conscience, transcends culture, and grounds every human right we claim to believe in. You don't have to be religious to feel it. You don't have to be perfect to reach for it. But to deny it altogether is to surrender the very idea of justice. Morality is objective, and we are responsible for discovering it.
If morality is objective, then someone must speak for it. And throughout history, those who claimed to speak for moral truth often used it to control, punish, and destroy. But if morality is subjective, it's not meaningless, it's alive. It adapts because we do. It changes because we learn. It reflects who we are, not who we're told to be. That doesn't make it weaker. It makes it honest, and human, and capable of growth. True morality isn't imposed from above. It's created, contested, and carried forward by people, flawed, diverse, evolving people, who choose what kind of world they want to live in. Morality is subjective, and that's what gives it meaning.
You've heard two visions of morality, one rooted in eternal truth, the other shaped by human experience. Now it's your turn. Who made the stronger case? Whose ideas held up when tested? Drop your vote in the comments and tell us why. Like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you don't miss the next clash, because every debate explores the ideas that define our world.